Welcome back to a best-of-3 series of professional StarCraft 2. Today it's time for a Zerg versus Protoss, where in game number 1 we find ourselves on Pride of Altaris. Bit of a strange map number 1, by the way. Normally this is like a map 5, maybe a map 6, maybe a map 7 or so. Normally we don't even see it in a best-of-3. Either way, spawning right here in the bottom right-hand corner, playing with the red Zerg drones from Ukraine, we have Bly. His opponent in the opposite corner with the blue Protoss probes from Germany, we have none other than GunGFuBanDa. Alrighty, now I selected this particular series because it has been a little while since I last featured Bly on the YouTube channel. Personally, I'm a big fan of the way that Bly likes to approach the game, and actually, okay, he's perfectly capable of playing a normal macro game, but he definitely isn't afraid to mix it up, and okay, I think he's gonna be going for the gold base first right here on Pride of Altaris. The golden base on Pride of Altaris, actually hold that thought, is it only me lagging, ping 125 for no reason? You feel the spikes, maybe BattleNet? Okay, maybe there was a bit of a lag spike throughout this match. Either way, normally a golden base in StarCraft 2 on the maps have only 6 golden mineral patches. However, on this one we have 8, which is huge. I was figuring if this is like map number 1 in a best-of-3 series, and it features Bly. I mean, he's probably not gonna be able to. He's probably not gonna be able to resist going for the gold base first. Anyways, this is something that GunGfu is gonna have to address. I don't think he can just sort of let the Zerg player have this because their income boost is just gonna be too significant. He did spot the hatchery right there, but he didn't show his opponent that he spotted the hatchery, which is quite nice. Okay, he's gonna be proxying his second pylon on the other side of the map. Cybercore is coming up though, so no Forge here as a follow-up, which I don't think would be a terrible idea, but obviously that becomes, yeah, a bit of a problem as well, because then defending at home with, like, Adepts is going to be much harder, because you can't make Adepts without a Cybercore. Either way, if he's going to be going for the Cybercore here, I think he's probably going to be building a couple of shield batteries over at the golden base right here of the Zerg. Bly has already transferred quite a few workers, so this is a very significant resource lost, because, I mean, all of that time they're traveling here, they're obviously not mining resources. It's going to take a little bit before they will actually, get that benefit. Either way, first Zealot has shown up, second Zealot just about to come up as well. Nexus has been planted down here by GunGfu. 2 shield batteries are now also building right here over at the golden minerals, and this is looking mighty fine right here. Excuse me, for GunGFuBanDa, right? I mean, what exactly are you gonna do? Bly is morphing in the low HP drone right there into a spine crawler, which is nice. Normally, right, whenever this would happen in your natural expo as a Zerg, you would pull the main queen down towards the low ground as well, but obviously that's gonna be pretty much impossible. Bly's gonna have to defend just with the units that he's got over here. Now, Zergling speed is coming up. It's going to be a little while until that is done. But I like this position here for the Protoss quite a bit. I mean, he does kind of need to kill the hatchery, though. Or at least a substantial amount of the workers. Adept almost ends up getting surrounded there, but luckily it does get into the range right there of the shield battery to stay alive. Spinecrawler, though, in a pretty clever position. I think the Spinecrawler can probably attack Zealots that are trying to attack the hatchery. Maybe? Maybe not. Either way, I think that is what Bly is going for. He can obviously always reposition it as well if he needs to. Yeah, this is actually going to be kind of hard right now to kill. Anyways, in the meantime, the Zerglings have gone towards the other side of the map, and it looks like GunGfu actually may have very well messed up the positioning right there of his very first pylon, because this gateway is supposed to be over here. And apparently, he put it a little bit too far forward. Now, the Adept does stay alive here, but Zergling speed finishes here at the same time as well. And a metabolic boost allows these lings to catch up to those units a little bit easier. Looks like one of the Zealots may have gone down here as well, over at the golden base of our Zerg player. Either way, 5 probes end up going down instead of the main base too. Spinecrawler right now, repositioning itself as well to be in range right here of the pylon. The Queen obviously has been slowly chipping away at as many of these Protoss units as possible as well, and it looks like Bly managed to defend here quite comfortably. Yeah, so I think what happened here is that GunGfu put his very first pylon a little bit too far forward, so he can't actually fit another one of these like 3x3 structures in between here. So you probably want to put it a little bit further back so you can actually create a proper wall off. This kind of looks like the way that I usually play Protoss. Definitely not what you want to do. And actually, Bly looks at it, and he instantly puts down the Baneling Nest. I think it actually makes a lot of sense. Normally, you don't Baneling bust Protosses. I mean, he doesn't have to, but he could just decide to. He's making a lot of Overlords, though. Third hatchery is coming up, too. I don't think you make a defensive Baneling Nest at this time. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a committed push. Stargate is coming up, but I mean, those Stargates are so late. Normally the first Stargate unit is out by the 4-minute mark. Right now we're 5 minutes into it and the Stargates are, well, barely halfway done. There are 2 Adepts available and there's the Zergling Flood. I think we're gonna see a Bailing Bust. So normally you don't Bailing Bust a Warp Gate or a Cybercore just because those units are very, very tanky. But I mean, this looks like an absolute banger of a position. You can kill both of the pylons, probably supply block the Protoss player, disable a bunch of these structures, and then also, you know, kill the shield battery with collateral damage. I think it makes a lot of sense, yeah. Bly decides to morph in a ton of Zerglings right now. Or Banelings right now, and he's, I guess, also adding on more and more Lings. He's planning on winning the game very soon. Obviously, he's got the golden minerals, so that income boost right here is definitely noticeable. Despite the fact that he's got less workers here than his opponent, he's getting a very healthy amount of income. Is GunGfu going to be able to defend against it? Oh, God. Luckily for him, he did go for an additional pylon over there. Stargates are also extremely exposed, actually. That pylon? Yeah, I agree. So, that's game. And this is why I like casting Bly matches. Alrighty, so game number 2 takes us to Blackburn. Pretty sure GunGfu just made a mistake right there with his very first pylon. So it actually is one of the worst feelings when you play Protoss and you put your pylon a little bit too far forward. You gotta be very careful with it. So the problem is, right, if you put the pylon too far forward, so this one I think is correctly positioned. But if you put it like slightly further forward, yes, you can put one on the side and then one on the other side as well. But it leaves like 2 huge gaps right there, which you kind of just have to fill up with pylons and shield batteries and stuff. And, well, as you may have already guessed, it also leaves you very susceptible to all kinds of Zerg aggression. So you gotta be careful with those kind of wall-offs. And yeah, your structure positioning is very tricky. Something you do have to keep in mind. Zerg players don't really care. They just kind of put down their structures wherever, and as long as the hatchery is in the right position, it doesn't really matter all too much. I actually used to hate that, though. Back in the day, about maybe a year or 2 ago, we saw Zerg players pretty much always like put their Evo chambers like right over here or so, which was great in the earlier stages of a Terran versus Zerg because you could block Hellion run-bys, but I swear that I saw like 50% of the time I saw those Evo chambers die with 3-3 halfway done. That happened so many times where like a random late game medevac drop just came in from an unexpected angle and killed the Evo chambers. Other than that though, Zerg players don't, like they don't do that anymore, but other than that, Zerg players generally speaking don't really think about their building positioning all too much. Maybe they should think about it a little bit more. I guess you think about your spawning pool positioning in like a Zerg versus Zerg. So normally in a ZVZ, you put your spawning pool over here so like the queen can create a full wall off in case like Lings and Banes try to run in. But obviously there's plenty of holes in the mineral line anyway, so yeah, anyways. For Protoss, it's definitely something very critical. In StarCraft 1 actually, I know that you pretty much need a PhD in order to figure out where you need to position your structures, because in StarCraft 1 the pathing is all wild and you actually need to wall off differently depending on every single spawn location on every single map, which is pretty crazy. Someone has to figure it out whenever new maps are introduced, and after a little while everyone just copies it, but it definitely is something that requires a lot of thinking and not something you can just plot down. So I guess GunGfu made a little bit of a mistake in game number 1 and he was punished for it. Cybercore followed up right here with a Stargate. Very stock standard playstyle. I mean, I don't feature GunGfu all too often on the YouTube channel either. The thing is, right, and I don't mean this with any disrespect or whatever, GunGfu just plays a very normal style of Protoss. So 9 times out of 10, I think he's gonna go for a Stargate opener in Protoss versus Zerg. And if I want to look at a stock standard Protoss player, more specifically a stock standard Protoss player from Germany, I would probably sooner have a look at Showtime, because Showtime plays a very similar style, but he's a little bit, you know, higher ranked overall. There's quite a few good Protoss players actually from the European scene. Recently, obviously, MaxPax has definitely been looking very strong as well. He's been making a name for himself, so I haven't featured GunGfu all too much recently either. Anyways, looks like in this particular game though, Bly just going for a good old standard start, even opting to go for the 3rd hatchery here first before taking the natural, which is something that Zerg players have been very comfortable with over the last, I would say, year or so. Protoss players have been sending out their probes very early on to try and block the naturals, and Zergs just simply have started taking their 3rd base first, just because they don't really care. It's a little bit more travel time, obviously, for the drones, especially the ones that get pulled out of the gas to go all the way down towards the third base. So it does slow down your economy ever so slightly, but obviously probes being sent out early to try and delay... That was actually a nice little pickup. Probes being sent out early to try and delay the Zerg's natural expo also had to travel sooner. And obviously that means they're out on the map for a little bit longer, and therefore Protoss also loses a little bit of income. I think overall it's probably an ever so slightly net positive for the Protoss, but Zergs don't really care all too much. Anyways, Oracle here as a follow-up after the very first Void Ray. Let's see if GunGFu can actually get any sort of damage done here. So far, it seems like Bly has got a nice little advantage, killing 2 probes from the opponent while not really... making any crazy decisions himself in the meantime. So he's just happily droning up here. 9 drones being produced here all at once. There's the +1 flyer attacks coming up as well for GunGFu. So this is going to be a full-on SkyToss transition. Second Stargate, yeah. This is something that the Zerg player scouts. Great scout right there by Bly. He saw the spinning right there in the Cybernetics core. So the Cybernetics core only has 3 upgrades. First off, it's got the Warp Gate Research, right? Which is the one that we see pretty much all of the time as the very first upgrade for Protoss. And then, other than that, it's got air weapon upgrades and air armor upgrades. So, if Bly sees that there's continued research there after Warp Gates are done, it basically has to be a Stargate transition. We haven't really gotten to the point in the meta yet where we see people faking the Stargate transition, which is something I personally would love to see. Because you know Zerglings are gonna run up the ramp. You can start up the upgrade. You could even like sell the story even more by chrono boosting it and then going for like, I don't know, an Immortal Sentry push. That would be kind of cool, right? I think that would be kind of cool. Anyways, it looks like Bly would be prepared for that as well, though, because he is going for a Queen March. Roaches, Zerglings, and then a lot of Queens are marching through the center of... God, that's so slow. They're marching through the center of the map already. GunGFu has spotted this, it seems. So he's already adding on a lot of static defense here, or at the very least he's got the idea that this could very well be happening. Stasis Ward over at the gold base, which I really, really like. Zerglings coming around the site, okay. 1 Void Ray goes down. Sorry, Void Ray. 1 Roach goes down. I was thinking, okay, 1 Ravager instead. Is going to be shut down for a little bit. Shield battery over there in the back. Not bad whatsoever. Bly looking mighty strong in this series so far, though. He's going for Altaris as a follow-up and adding on more Queens. How much damage can he do? So Zerg at this point is looking to kill the third base of the Protoss player. If he can kill the third base, he's going to be in a pretty good spot, assuming he doesn't die to the Void Ray counterattack. Corrosive Balls right there, trying to just slow down this Protoss ever so slightly. If you can force these Void Rays to constantly move around, that obviously is what you want. Pretty good control so far here by GunGFu, though, but I do feel like he's in a little bit of trouble. Battery overcharge has already run out. A lot of these Void Rays are running low, and look at the Corrosive Balls, right? Just constantly forcing those Voids to reposition themselves. These 2 shield batteries over here are very nice, keeping these Void Rays alive for a little while longer. He really tries to keep the third up, but probes are starting to fall, and I've got a feeling, that the Zerg can just start target firing down the Nexus itself. Once again, Corrosive Balls, okay. Not the best position right there for the Void Rays on top of the Nexus, because that's exactly where Zerg wants to be biling in the first place. The Queens definitely will go down, though. Yeah, these Queens are not going to be able to make it home. They knew it was a one-way trip. Third Nexus, though, does fall. 6 probes only, though. But obviously, well, 7, I guess, right now. 2 of those ended up dying earlier on into this match as well. So, worker-wise, GunGFu kept the majority of them alive. And in the meantime, it's not like Bly has a killer eco on the back of this either. He's currently at 44 drones versus 51 probes. So as soon as all of these Zerg units get killed, I mean, a couple of Zerglings did split themselves off together with 1 Ravager from the rest, trying to keep these Void Rays occupied for a little while longer. But he is going to go in for the counterattack. Instant 3rd Stargate, as well as a Fleet Beacon here too. So GunGFu is going for the full-on SkyToss experience. Pylon over there will actually finish up, so that's nice. Is there enough here for the Zerg player to defend against these Void Rays? This is where I make mistakes in my games. Usually, I, deal a lot of damage with my Queen March, and then, I kill the Protoss' third base and, 20 probes and all that, and then I just die to 20 Void Rays inside of my main base. Looks like Bly did not make that a rookie mistake. He's gone for the Hydrodon and the Lariat at an appropriate time, and there's plenty of Queens out at this point as well to protect against these Void Rays. But you can imagine if you continuously send in reinforcements as well while you're pushing, yes, maybe you can deal more damage and you can secure the kill on the third a little bit easier. But obviously it's also very dangerous because then you might accidentally just, you know, get destroyed by the Void Rays once they inevitably show up in your base. So the follow-up right here from GunGFu is not actually carriers. He has gone for Tempest. I don't really like this position for him all too much. But this is a lot of Hydras. How many queens are we on? 10 queens. Only 46 drones. Bly is gonna go for a second wave to this all-in. GunGFu also splitting up a couple of Void Rays, trying to see if he could beam down the main base. But this is actually Bly going for a second wave to this all-in, and I think actually Tempest are gonna be phenomenal. None of these Zerg units can hit the Tempest. I mean, assuming the Tempest stay in the right spot anyways. They shouldn't be taking damage. They also have a ton of health, so they don't really care all too much. Void Rays did get recalled. Hydras are coming across right now as well. But I like this position here for GunGFu more and more right now, baiting this out perfectly. If this would have been carriers, I think it would have been dead. I don't think it could do much against carriers, but since this is a Hydra transition, I mean, it kind of is forced, right? From the Protoss player as well. Yeah, like by the Protoss player, rather. Zerg is pretty much always going to go and follow up with Hydralisks against Void Rays. It makes sense that he goes for a push along these lines. I mean, I haven't seen it all too much. But I guess Bly is someone who would like to do that. 2 Tempests end up going down there, which is really sloppy. Not really what you want at all. Anyways, Bly did drone up quite aggressively behind this, so he's currently sitting at 56 workers here, going for the golden base right now, but the same can be said for GunGFu, who's doing the same thing. He also did go for the Tectonic Destabilizers upgrade, if I'm not mistaken, which is an upgrade that allows these Tempests to deal additional damage to structures. Now, I can only imagine, I haven't really seen this all too often, but Tempest shooting from like right over here or so into the main base, there's still this huge area over here. But there's definitely some places where these Tempests can be extremely annoying. Robo Bay is a follow-up too. There's the speed upgrade as well for the Void Race, and now we finally see the carrier transition. I don't think Hydras are going to be able to achieve too much. We still don't really have any kind of upgrades right here for the Zerg units either, by the way, as far as like evolution chambers go. Whereas we already do have a hive about halfway done, as well as a Baneling nest. So Hydraling Bane maybe, but that's going to be a very cost-inefficient unit comp. Void Race did get spotted right there. With a little changeling it seems, so Hydras are running on over towards the main base. A couple of Infestors here as a follow-up, but I'm liking this position for GunGFu quite a bit here. So he's gone for the +2. +2 is a huge upgrade on the carriers in particular. He's gone for... he's gone for Disruptors here, so I don't think Hydras are going to be able to achieve too much. Although he is giving away a lot of free units, man. These Protoss units are expensive. 2 Tempests there and did he not lose a single Void Ray yet? Huh. That's actually quite impressive. I do think that the Sentry and the 2 Tempests right there shouldn't have gone down, but... he's clearing out some of the creep. The Void Rays in the meantime, by the way, are still all the way down south. I do think that if they decide to engage the main base, a few of them will be popped out of the sky, but... GunGFu's got the golden base. A couple of Hydras here going around the back. Alright, dealing some damage, but not really too much. Tempests are having a grand old time over here. Here's the Void Race. Yeah, Hydras are already over here. Fungal growth could be a disaster. Okay, 2 fungal or 2 Void Rays rather do get fungled here. So both of them will go down. Could have been much worse. Hydras over here, though, are also being sacrificed. So a little bit of sloppiness here, too, by Bly. He's following up with more Hydras and then also +1 missile. I don't really like it all too much against the Disruptor-based army. I can just imagine a Disruptor hitting right over here and then everything from the Zerg player dying, right? I mean, technically speaking, if you micro well, it should be something you can prevent from happening, but... GunGFu's army here is becoming a lot more sophisticated. Okay, so Ultralisks are going to be added into the mix. This is a unit comp that I actually like myself quite a bit. It's just not very good at the pro level, is it? Anyways, Hydra Ultra, together with, like, Infestor or Viper support is actually surprisingly strong. So the idea is that you have the Ultras in the front of the army, killing all of the Disruptors or High Templar, and then the Hydras with, like, for example, Microbial Shroud or Vipers, right, with abductions and stuff, can kill everything else. Apparently, Bly has gone for both of them, but I am a little bit scared for disruptor hits. Okay, GunGfu actually going for what seems to be a counterattack. Generally speaking, I don't think you want to move out with this army until you're maxed out. And the supply count here is a little bit deceiving because there's 3 carriers on the production tab still, and that already counts towards the total supply here of the Protoss player. Carriers are obviously very supply heavy. Yeah, there's abductions. Very nicely done here by the Zerg player, but I think the next, the hatchery here will still go down. Wow, Viper was already dead, it felt like, but... Viper went down, but so did the carrier, and so did the hatchery. I think GunGfu is going a little too aggressive here, isn't he? Unless he hits like some really good... Oh my god, disruptor hits! Okay, one good disruptor hit, but at the cost of all of the disruptors as well. Yeah, GunGfu's playing a little YOLO here. Going for the 5th base in the top left. I mean, Blight did lose the gold base, I suppose, but he's just gonna retake it. There's an Ultra coming up. Ultras don't really care, by the way, against Interceptors. Like, they just stay alive against Interceptors for an exceptionally long time. So they're a bit of a funny unit added into the mix here, but it does make sense because you can get them to kill the units that mainly counter the Hydras. And the units that mainly counter the Hydras aren't actually the carriers. Or like any of the Skytools units. It's the Disruptors, or for example, the High Templar, or both. Anyways, Ultras obviously do need to be in the front. They're kind of derping over here, which is what they're best at. Microbial Shroud even on top of that Ultra. That Ultra is taking very, very small amounts of damage. A couple of probes did go down here. There's no way, though. There's even remotely enough here. Nice Disruptor Purification Nova there as well by GunGfu. And I think eventually Zerg is just going to be cleaned up here, no? Microbial Shroud is actually surprisingly strong. There, I said it. When used in the right situation, I feel like these Zerg units should have died like 10 minutes ago. Okay, like 30 seconds ago. But they stayed alive. I feel like we could at least kill that one Ultra as well, but he doesn't really want to overextend. Anyways, the Zerglings and Hydras going for the top left-hand corner as well. Bly's starting to stress the multitasking. Tricky to split up this Protoss army properly, which is why normally we see a ton of static defense instead. Man, we've seen a lot of dead probes actually, yeah. 48 right now. Still, this is a very sophisticated Protoss army. There's High Templar, there's Disruptors, there's Carriers, there's Tempest, there's Void Rays, there's even an Immortal in here, which I do really like. Okay, a couple of abductions once again, but... Hydras, I mean, they killed one of them, but at the cost of like a dozen Hydralisks. Looks like the Ultra there ended up going down as well. 14 probes in total too, but this is a moment where GunGfu can definitely consider going for a counterattack. He's already got the +3 upgrades done. He's gonna go into the armor upgrades here as well. Some static defense in the top left-hand corner should keep this base up and running as well, and a couple of Zealot Warpins are gonna make this a little bit easier. Okay, this is the moment to strike right here for GunGfu. I mean, he could sit back and macro up a little bit more. He does have a lot of units still on the production tab. His army obviously still getting better. Once again, a unit being YOLO'd forward there for no apparent reason whatsoever. But Storms? Ooh, Storms could be a disaster. Did he just kill one of his own High Templar, or was that a creep tumor? Anyways, I think we need an Ultralisk in here. We need probably like a couple of Ultras in here to clear out the High Templar as well as the Disruptors. The problem is that the Immortal here deals a ton of damage. There's only one of them. It's got 2 kills, but I think both of those kills are probably Ultralisks. Yeah, there's a couple more coming up right now, but Zerg doesn't have a whole lot of money in the bank anymore. Despite the fact that GunGfu got here in a pretty strange way, he did manage to go up to full 5-base eco. He's also now essentially maxed out on a full Skytools Death Ball, so I'm liking the spot quite a bit. Only just now going for charge. The charge here is so incredibly late. Yeah, I actually don't mind the fact here that GunGfu decided to go back home. Just get the upgrades done, max out on an actual, like, maxed out army, and then try and go for a fight. Alright. So, there's gonna be quite a few Ultralisks available. So again, Ultras in the front to kill the High Templar as well as, like, the Disruptors. And then Hydras with Microbial Shroud or Abduction, or both, to kill everything else that the Protoss player has. Protoss here is mostly just gonna try and just feedback whatever they can, and obviously, yeah, roll in the Disruptors to those Hydralisks as well. He's got the Psionic Storm available too, which I like quite a bit, but this is one hell of a Protoss army. Okay, Immortal over here, once again, dealing a lot of damage there to those Ultralisks. They are slowly being picked off here. The Void Rays from the early game also helping out quite a bit. Look at what GunGFu is doing, right? Dragging this army around. At the same time, a few Hydras here are killing a few probes, but I don't think it's really that important. I think this fight over here is far more critical. Bly is slowly maxing out once again, adding on more Hydras, bringing the Spore Crawlers from the early game right here to the front as well. Okay, I do see a few Infestors going down there. Good Storm once again, keeping this Zerg player in the back. Ultra there from the Natural Expo. Gets killed pretty much right away, and at this point, I don't think there's actually enough anti-air anymore. I mean, double Storm right there on the Hydra. Archon Morphin as well. Very nicely done here by GunGFu. GunGFu also ended up killing the Hydras behind the third base, it seems, with another Archon. And I've got a feeling that, you know, even though Microbial Shroud is being used in this game, unironically, there's too much Protoss here in the area. Not enough Hydras to clear any of this out. GG is called, and GunGFu wins game number 2. Alrighty, so game number 3 takes us to Hardwire. It's gonna be the deciders match here. Trying to think if there's any crazy builds that we can expect on this map, but no, I don't think I've really seen any craziness on Hardwire. It's a relatively standard map. There's no high yield gases. There's no like golden minerals either. I think GunGFu is probably just gonna go for the good old Stargate opener, and I think Bly probably will go for a similar start as he did in the previous one, right? He's once again gonna go for the third base first. This is something that Zerg players... Oh, never mind. Ooh, okay, never mind. I was thinking he's gonna go and take the third base first, which is something he showed in the... But that was a little bit too soon for it. Something that he showed earlier. Okay, now the probe also tracked that drone for a little bit, but then decided to go back to blocking the natural. I think that Bly is gonna go for a proxy hatch. Is he? We've seen him do a lot of proxy hatches in the past, of course. Okay, so I think he's gonna go hatch with a hatchery block. Is that what we're doing? I mean, GunGFu at this point can see it, though. He should really send a probe. He should have seen a glimpse right there of the drone, I think, but... Anyways, probes are pulled already from the main base, and this is something that Bly likes to mix in his games all of the time, where he basically just tries to be as annoying to the Protoss player as possible. You know how, like, Terran players like to block expansions with building engineering bays in them, and Protoss players like to go and, like, build a pylon and sometimes even a cybernetics core? This is like, the worst version of those builds. This is one of those strategies that's exceptionally annoying to go up against as a Protoss player on the ladder, because not a lot of people do this, and you need to know how to respond to it. Now, I believe that this is the correct counter. I've seen many pro players do a very similar one. Some of them pull 5 workers, some of them pull 6. Apparently, GunGFu is pulling 4, which I've seen in the past as well, so this is going to be able to out-DPS the building hatchery together with the Zealot, but very quick clicking right there by Bly. He uses the little bit of creep that hatchery leaves behind for a few seconds to also now follow this up with an evolution chamber. And he used the difference in the resources right there to go for the third base. Pretty much none of the Zerg players like to do this at the pro level, but Bly, yeah, he likes to mix it in. I think it's one of those things where, like, theoretically, it shouldn't put Zerg in a good position. But realistically, there's a good chance that the Protoss is gonna mess up at least a little bit. I don't think GunGFu really messed up here, but obviously his timings are all gonna be ever so slightly off, and all of it is just gonna be a little bit different than what you normally have. So theoretically, it shouldn't matter if you have practice against it, but it's also something that no one really does a whole lot, other than Bly, I suppose. So there's a good chance that you haven't played against it in a good while, and that you're gonna second guess every single move from here on out. Anyways, Bly just following this up with standard stuff for now. Stargate opener once again, by the way, here from GunGFu. I mean, I like the Stargate openers when playing Protoss. When casting the Protoss games, I think they're a little bit... Once upon a time, we saw an even mix between Twilight Council and Robo facilities and Stargate openers. These days, it's pretty much all Stargate, 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 or an Adept all-in, but... yeah, I can't blame the Protoss players for it, obviously. It's just simply the best move that you can currently go for. It just makes the first few minutes of the game a little bit mundane. Anyways, Void Ray is going to meet this Overlord here in a little bit. He's probably going to use that Void Ray as well to send a probe on over towards the third base. Third base will probably be taken without too much contest. But already, Zerg, in the meantime, on the other side of the map, is adding on quite a few queens. So previously, we saw Bly going for that queen march. He's already on 4 queens here. Queen number 5 just about to pop out as well. I'm expecting a Roach Warren here relatively soon. And, well, I guess the Overlord over here causing a supply block here. Anyways, I'm expecting, okay. No Roach Warren yet. We're gonna go straight into the lair instead. So, Bly apparently not going for a Queen March this time around. I mean, you can still go for a Queen March if you want to with a lair. It's just a little bit weaker overall. Ooh, okay. So GunGFu, I'm completely wrong. Not going for the third Nexus, like I was saying. I mean, he was pretending that he was going for a third Nexus, but he didn't actually take it. Instead, he followed up with a Twilight Council and is now going into the Glaives upgrade. How many gateways are we gonna go and do in total? I think just 4, but this is something that we don't really see all too often. Into a Queen March, I think going for the Glaives upgrade is pretty terrible, because then you just kind of get caught in the middle of the map with a bunch of roaches and Zerglings against your Adepts. But in this particular circumstance, where I think the lair has been spotted... No, actually, he didn't see it. He's taking a bit of a gamble, I suppose. I do think that Adepts can be very, very helpful. Dark Shrine is a follow-up too. Okay. Alright, here I am complaining about Void Ray openers. Not because I don't think they're good, but because I think they're a little bit, you know, boring. GunGFu decides to mix it up. Is this smart? Probably, if I'm being brutally honest with you, probably not. You're probably better off just going for a second Stargate and then a third Stargate as well. Bly with the perfect Overlord Scout, by the way, sees literally everything. Stasis Ward in the back of the main base. Almost catching the entire mineral line, but not quite. Robo Facility here as a follow-up, as well as that Dark Shrine, as well as Glaives. Yeah, so these are all very expensive structures to get and very expensive upgrades to research. And is this really something that's gonna pay for itself? Because, I mean, what do you need here as the Zerg? Well, he's already doing the Serral thing that we see Serral do all of the time against Glaives, where you make a wall off over here, and then if the Adepts decide to move forward, you finish the wall off here, and then the Shades obviously can't go through. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that, theoretically speaking, Zerg shouldn't really take a whole lot of damage against this. And then Protoss is stuck on... yeah, as like an inferior army. He needs to get some sort of damage done to actually pay for all of these researches that he's done and all of those upgrades he's been getting. Another problem too, I suppose, that Protoss players run into is that, like, Protoss, when they go Skytals, Zerg really only has Corruptors and Hydras and maybe Queens to deal with them. But against, like, a ground-based Protoss army, Zerg has, like, 17 options. From Roach Ravager to Roach Ravager Ling Bane to Hydra Ling Bane to Hydra Lurker Viper, Brute Lord Corruptor. There's a lot of options that Zerg has against the ground army that they don't really have against the Skytals-based army. So it just makes the game a little bit more predictable, I guess, from the Protoss' point of view. So while I am a fan of the fact that GunGFu is going for this build, I don't actually think it's the best option if you want to win the game. Does that make any sense? I hope it makes some sort of sense here. Obviously, it's still strong, though. We see Trap playing this sort of army all of the time. Trap, definitely the most successful Protoss competitor this year. It just feels much harder. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's, like, I don't think it's actually weak, but it just makes the game much more complex. And why make the game harder than it, you know, needs to be if you could just make a bunch of Void Rays and then go into Disruptors and Carriers, right? Like... It does make me respect GunGFu a little bit more, though. I already thought him as a very good Protoss player, but I like to see it mixed up here as well, so that's cool. So he's gonna go for a full-on ground-based Protoss army here in game number 3, after opening up with a couple of Stargate units. Now, what is the counter gonna be from Bly? Bly once again going into the Hive, once again going into the Baneling Nest, +1 missile upgrades. So far, by the way, those Adepts did absolutely nothing. 2 Adepts were killed. But... yeah, they're not going to be very helpful here going forward. He didn't make that many, though. Oh, he's going to go for 11 Mutas. That's another unit. Another unit that normally is just completely nullified when you go for, like, a full-on Stargate opener is the Mutalisk. It's not something that you really have to concern yourself with, but it's the absolute worst feeling when you have like 10 mutas going from your natural to the main base to the natural to the third base, and you're trying to chase it down with a couple of stalkers. I do think I saw Blink on the production tab earlier. Yes. So Blink at this point is done. And actually a Dark Templar of... Oh, no. I thought the Dark Templar could see the flippy flappies there, but not quite. Anyways, mutas are soon going to be inside of the main base here. And at this point, I am seeing absolutely nothing for GunGFu to deal with this. Whereas if you go for a Stargate opener, guess what? You might see mutas, but you're just gonna kill him. Huge recall here as well, forcing all of those units over to the main base. That's already 10 probes down the drain. And actually, Bly decides to double down on the Mutalisks. Bly's like, should have played triple Stargate, fool. There it is. Another Stargate comes up. Fleet Beacon comes up as well. And we see a couple of Phoenixes now on the production tab. Yeah, this matchup really becomes so much more beautiful, though, when we see the variety of units that, you know, are available for both of them. Zerg could even go Swarm Host against this sort of army. When's the last time you've seen a Swarm Host in a game of StarCraft 2? I had someone in the comment section on a YouTube video asking the other day if Swarm Hosts are still in the game. It's gotten that far. People think they don't even exist anymore. No, they're still there. So the thing is, when you have enough mutas, you can actually contest the stalkers quite well, yeah. Yeah, you blink twice and the mineral lines are gone. This is one of the worst feelings as a Protoss player here. 14 probes. On top of the 10 or so that they got earlier. He's adding on more mutas. I can't believe he's doubling down on mutas this much. Another group of probes. Main base. My god. 31 probes. Yeah, should have gone Stargate. Should have gone Stargate opener. As boring as it is to see a similar start almost every time, I do think it's actually the right thing to do. Anyways, so this is the Anion Pulse Crystals, which is the ranged upgrade for the Phoenixes. It is going to make the Phoenixes a very good counter, but I think honestly at this point, the damage has already been done. 34 probes ended up going down, whereas Zerg wasn't even opening up this game with, you know, an harassment build. That was the Protoss, right? Protoss went for the Glaives and the Void Ray and all that. They were the ones that were meant to deal damage. They dealt absolutely nothing. Banelings over at the fourth base here as well. Okay, very nice disruptor hit over there, but I think some of the probes will still end up going down, even force fielding his own workers closer together. Okay, a couple of units do get the wraparound over there. A couple of good force fields here as well, keeping this this Protoss army at least relatively safe. But in the meantime, yeah, the probes are being absolutely demolished. And Bly, he shows us why going for the Stargate, followed up by another Stargate, followed up by another Stargate, may very well be the better approach in this particular matchup.